Welcome back, guys and girls. Here's the piston after I got the rings out. I had to use a ring groove cleaning tool to clean out all the crud and dirt and rust that was in these piston rings slots. If you've never seen one of those tools, here's the tool. This wraps around the piston here, and it has little groove cutting bits here that you can select. Loosen the screw, select your proper size groove, and place it in the slot. Here's the tool mocked up in the piston ring. You can see how the groove cutter goes into the groove, and then you just rotate this around like this to cut the dirt out. So that's a ring groove piston cleaning tool. So this video is going to be about installing the rings on the piston. Since we have the piston cleaned up, well, the grooves are cleaned up here. I've got all three of the grooves cleaned up. Now I'm going to take a wire brush and clean up the outside and maybe the top a little bit here. Clean off the rust and any kind of raised material that we don't want on there. I'm just using a file brush cleaner. Seems to work pretty well. Once you have it to where you like it, then you're ready to install your rings. So our piston's all cleaned up. I wire brushed it. Now we're going to install the rings. I've already laid out my rings. I've got my oiling rings here, oil spacer, the bottom groove, and then the top groove. There's usually a marking on the bottom groove. This is your oil groove, oil ring, keeps the oil from coming up. So there's you can see this little dot here on the ring. That is supposed to go to the up towards the top of the piston. Now I've already gapped these rings. I've already checked them all. And you do that by placing them in the cylinder bore and use a feeler gauge to make sure they're parallel to the piston bore, and check with a feeler gauge inside the opening here. When it compresses inside the cylinder bore, you'll be able to it should have a specification recommended for clearance. So you want to check that before installing. So you're going to start with the oiling spacer. You're going to put the opening on the piston boss. You just spread it slightly just to get it over the piston. Put that in there. You have to pay attention to where your gap is because you're going to stagger the gaps so that no oil gets through to the combustion chamber. Each oil spacer gets 2 oiling rings. These are rotated around over the piston top. One goes that way, the other will go this way. And you want to stagger the gap. Okay, now we're ready to install the oiling ring, the lower ring. The little dot will go to the top of the piston. Now you want the gap to be on the other side of where your other gaps were. So we have the 3 gaps here for the oiling ring. We're going to stick the lower gap on this ring here, and for the top ring we're going to stick the gap over on this side. They're all staggered. I like doing this with my thumbs, it works easier. You can slip it on the piston and then rotate it. They move fairly easily. You just have to be very careful you don't crack the ring. That would be bad. And there it is. We'll slide that, make sure that gap is opposite of this gap. And your rings are on the piston.